I always considered myself a rational person. Numbers, logic, and code made sense to me, much more than people ever did. That's why I became a software engineer. Why I spent countless hours in front of a glowing screen, diving deep into lines of code. But nothing could have prepared me for the day I encountered something that defied all reason. It was a late Tuesday evening when it all began. I had been working from home, finishing up a project that had been dragging on for weeks. My apartment was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from the monitor. The hum of the computer fan was a constant companion, almost comforting in its monotony. I was knee-deep in debugging a particularly stubborn piece of code when my screen flickered. At first, I didn't think much of it. A loose cable, perhaps. But then it happened again, this time more violently, as if the screen was struggling to stay on. My hands froze above the keyboard. I leaned in closer, squinting at the monitor. That's when I noticed something strange. Lines of code I hadn't written were appearing, one by one, in rapid succession. The text was jumbled, nonsensical at first glance. Strings of characters that looked like they had been pulled from a corrupted file. But as I stared, something began to emerge. A pattern, hidden within the chaos. Words started to form, as if the machine was trying to communicate with me. Hello, who is this? My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the message, my mind racing to make sense of it. A prank? A glitch? I typed back cautiously, my fingers trembling slightly. Who are you? For a moment, nothing happened. Then, more text appeared, but this time, it wasn't random. It was deliberate, calculated. I am here. I felt a chill run down my spine. The room suddenly felt colder, the shadows in the corners of the room darker. The rational part of my brain tried to assert itself. This was some sort of elaborate joke, a virus maybe. But deep down, something about this felt wrong. I tried to close the program, but the screen froze. Panic started to set in. My mouse was unresponsive, the keyboard useless. I reached for the power button, but just as I was about to press it, the screen blinked off, plunging the room into darkness. I sat there, heart pounding, listening to the silence. The hum of the computer had stopped, replaced by an oppressive quiet. I could feel the weight of something unseen in the room with me, watching, waiting. Then, without warning, the screen flickered back to life. But it wasn't my desktop that greeted me. Instead, it was a video feed, grainy and distorted like footage from an old security camera. The image showed a room that looked eerily familiar. It took me a moment to realize that it was my own living room, seen from an angle that could only be captured by the camera on my laptop. I spun around in my chair, eyes darting to the laptop on the coffee table. The screen was dark, the lid closed, but the feed continued, showing me sitting at my desk, a look of confusion and fear on my face. My blood ran cold. This wasn't possible. The laptop wasn't even on. I turned back to the monitor, and that's when I saw it. A shadow, moving in the background of the video. It was subtle at first, just a flicker of movement, but then it grew larger, more defined. A figure stepped into view, a silhouette that seemed to pulse and distort as it moved closer to the camera. I couldn't make out any features, just a dark, humanoid shape that oozed malevolence. It stopped behind my chair, the same chair I was sitting in, and leaned in, as if whispering something into my ear. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, my body tensed, every muscle on high alert. I wanted to turn around, to confront whatever was there, but fear held me in place. The figure on the screen straightened up, its head tilting as if examining me. Then, in a voice that crackled with static and malice, it spoke. "Join us." I jumped up from my chair, heart racing, and backed away from the desk. The video feed blinked out, replaced by the same jumbled code from before. But now, the words were clearer, more insistent. "Join us. You cannot escape." My hands shook as I fumbled with the power button, desperate to shut the computer down. But it was no use. The screen remained lit, the message repeating over and over. "Join us. Join us. Join us." I yanked the power cord from the wall. The screen finally went dark, but the words seemed to linger in the air, a whisper that crawled under my skin. I stood there in the darkness, heart pounding, trying to catch my breath. That's when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping coming from the other side of the room. I turned slowly, eyes wide, and saw the laptop on the coffee table. The lid was still closed, but the tapping continued, growing louder with each passing second. I took a hesitant step forward, then another, until I was standing right in front of it. My hand reached out, trembling, as I slowly lifted the lid. The screen flickered to life, showing the same video feed as before. But this time, the figure was standing right in front of the camera, its face inches from the screen. Its eyes were hollow, empty voids that seemed to suck in all the light around them. And then, with a voice that was both a whisper and a scream, it spoke again. "Join us." The laptop screen cracked, splintering like a spider web as the figure lunged forward. I stumbled back, the room spinning as I fell to the floor. The last thing I saw before everything went black was that same message, burning itself into my mind. "Join us." I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the floor beside me. The room was still dark, but the tapping had stopped. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for the phone. The glow of the screen, a small comfort in the oppressive darkness. A new message had appeared, but it wasn't from any of my contacts. It was a string of numbers, a code of some sort. I stared at it, trying to decipher its meaning, but my mind was too frazzled to make sense of it. Then, slowly, a realization dawned on me. The numbers weren't random. They were coordinates. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Every instinct screamed at me to ignore it, to forget everything that had happened and move on. But something deeper, a primal curiosity, compelled me to dig deeper. I copied the coordinates into my computer and pulled up a map. The location was nearby, just a few miles from my apartment, in an area I had never visited before. It was isolated, far from the city center, in a place where the streetlights barely reached. My heart raced as I considered my options. I could stay here, try to forget what had happened, or I could go to that location and find out what was really going on. In the end, my curiosity won out. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, and set out into the night, the coordinates guiding me to a place that felt like it was pulling me in, like a spider drawing its prey into its web. The drive was uneventful, the streets empty as I left the city behind. The coordinates led me to an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The building loomed in the darkness, its windows shattered, its walls covered in graffiti. It looked like it had been forgotten by time, a relic of a bygone era. I parked the car and stepped out, the cold night air biting at my skin. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of my footsteps crunching on the gravel. As I approached the entrance, I felt a sense of déjà vu, like I had been here before in a dream. The door creaked open with a push, revealing a dark, empty space beyond. I hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, my phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with dust, the floor littered with debris. The warehouse was vast, its ceiling lost in the shadows above. I walked deeper into the building, following some unseen force that seemed to guide my steps. The deeper I went, the colder it became, until I could see my breath fogging in the light of my phone. Then, in the distance, I saw it, a faint glow, like the screen of a computer, coming from a room at the far end of the warehouse. My heart pounded as I approached, the light growing brighter with each step. When I reached the room, I found a single computer sitting on a dusty desk, its screen the only source of light. The monitor displayed a familiar scene, the same video feed from my apartment, but this time the figure was gone, replaced by a single line of text. "You are here. Welcome." My blood ran cold. I reached out to touch the keyboard, but before I could, the screen flickered, and a new message appeared. "Join us." The words repeated, over and over, faster and faster, until the screen was filled with them. The room grew colder, the light flickering as the computer hummed louder and louder. And then, from the shadows, they emerged. Figures. Dozens of them, their hollow eyes glowing in the darkness. They moved silently, surrounding me, their presence suffocating. The screen flashed one final time, and the words changed. "You cannot escape." The figures closed in, their cold hands reaching out, and as they touched me, I felt the warmth drain from my body, replaced by an icy numbness that seeped into my bones. My vision blurred, the world spinning as I was pulled into the darkness. The last thing I heard was the computer, still humming as it welcomed me to the place where logic and reason no longer applied. The place where I would remain forever, as just another ghost in the machine.